Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And we have a returning guest who appeared back in February 2022, which was episode 209. So encourage you that are listening to go back to that episode. So we have Eldur, who is the founder and CEO of Amaroq Minerals, a Greenland-focused mining company engaged in the identification, acquisition, exploration, and development of gold properties and other strategic minerals assets in Greenland. Eldur is a geologist by background and has worked in and around Greenland and Iceland for well over a decade now, and started the company, which was formerly known as AEX Gold, back in 2017. So he's come a long way since then, and he's here today to share his story and what they've been up to since we last spoke, which was 18 months ago. So let's welcome Eldur to the podcast. How you doing, Eldur?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, and I appreciate your time. So for those that didn't listen to the previous episode, I wonder if you can give us a snapshot of yourself and obviously of your career, and I suppose a little bit about the company since you formed obviously 6-7 years ago.
Certainly. Right. So I'm to your point, I'm an Icelandic individual, born and then grew up in a farm here in Iceland, a sheep farm in Iceland. When I was 16, moved to Reykjavik, learned geology here in Iceland, and very much got focused on the renewable energy industry. For those who don't know, Iceland has not any minerals of any large content. It doesn't have any hydrocarbons. So we had to make use of our geothermal energy to heat up houses, generate electricity, etc., etc. And I was lucky enough to be involved in that kind of a business worldwide prior to me starting this up. I founded my first company in the renewable space in Asia, where we were doing house heating in China with a group called Sinopec through a company that is now called Arctic Green Energy. And we also had geothermal power assets in the Philippines and worked in the kind of Asia region. This was a time when Iceland had its big financial collapse. And so when I was relatively young age at that point in time, I had the kind of a technical know-how. I managed to be lucky enough or to be able to kind of partner myself with financiers to buy the kind of a arm of the company I used to work for in Asia, because I was stationed and was there. And we grew that business to become a very large district heating business, geothermal district heating business. We effectively closed down coal heating power station and replaced them with geothermal heating within the cities in China. In 2012, I got the opportunity, me and my partner, to sell our stake in this business to one of the founding partners who were with us at that point in time. And I was then younger than I am today, but we started to focus on Greenland. And a lot of the reason why we started to focus on Greenland was related to the fact that you could see how much impact Asia, and in this sense China, had on the commodity market, massive amount of demand, big investment, and so on. So I thought to myself, we have an island here next to Iceland, which has the size of Australia. It's one of few, or if the only, large mineral play that is left in the world. If you take outside of the box, maybe Afghanistan and Colombia, but for obvious reason, and Greenland is in a different jurisdiction and so on. So we set ourselves to kind of a focus on that, using some of the know-how being in Iceland, which is only a few hundred kilometers away from Greenland. It's just effectively the same economical area. And that's kind of how it started, slowly and gradually, back in, I want to say, 2013, when we started focusing on Greenland.
So I'm wondering if you can give us a snapshot of the business, and like I mentioned, you've been with the or started the business back in 2015, which was previously known as AEX Gold. I wonder if you can just take us through that journey so people understand a little bit of background of the company.
No, certainly. And so when we started it, it was very much on the basis of that Greenland has, in our mind, one of the best mineral potential you can find. I mean, the current legislation came in play in 2009 that allowed listed entities, effectively financiers all around the world, to invest in the country. So the legislation is very investable, and it's kind of at the highest standard you can find in our view. Geological prospectivity is fantastic. So what you're looking at there, most of these resources are on surface. The glacier has effectively scrubbed the whole land there, so it worked as a giant shovel. So you see outcropping of these mineral deposits coming to surface. Due to the size of the country, if you think about it, Greenland goes more northerly, southerly, westerly, and easterly than Iceland. It's so vast, and you get various different mineral belts and mineral age of age of rocks in Greenland, which if you put it into prehistoric time, it used to be connected to most of the main continents, being Russia, Norway, Labrador, Canada, all the way down to Ireland. Like it kind of fits into that picture. And most of these other countries have been mined, explored, decades, to some extent hundreds of years, but this bit hasn't been. So the opportunity there was that this hadn't been explored for obvious reason. There's, it takes cost to getting in there. There's only 56,000 people who live in the whole island in 17 towns and 33 settlements. So most of these deposits that had already been discovered when we came there, they were literally a few kilometers away from the settlement. So people hadn't wandered much outside of that. So as a strategy for us, we instantly knew that for us to be successful there, on one hand, we needed to build up an extremely strong team that would have understanding of how you should operate in the Arctic environment, and also how you should operate in the highest standard in the mineral sector, right? Because you need to attract both capital, and you need to be able to attract capital. You need to be able to show that you can execute and do things. And that is something that was unknown in Greenland. Can you execute? Can you deliver a project? Can you deliver exploration, et cetera, et cetera? That led us to focus mainly on South Greenland. South Greenland is the same latitude as Oslo or Helsinki. Is more southerly than where I live here in Reykjavik. So it's effectively ice-free down there. It got long season, but most importantly, it has geological prospectivity that is, one of the best things I've ever worked in, ever, right? So you have on the one side a belt in Labrador with assets like Voisey's Bay. It crosses South Greenland, where you have 2 or 3 of the largest rare earth and deposits in the world. One of the reasons why Donald Trump was quite interested in this country, right? And then that same belt then goes into Sweden and Finland, where you have the Kirununa and all of it. So it's kind of on that belt. Perpendicular to that, you also have a gold line that goes from effectively Newfoundland through South Greenland and into Sweden, according to our kind of a thesis. So as a start for us, and we are going into the industry when everybody's going, this was back in 2013, you had a major collapse in commodity prices and so on. So we took advantage of that situation and started buying up assets. And it took us a long time to actually get into position where we are now, I think, second or becoming to be the largest license holder in Greenland, right? In South Greenland. And so we started there, and then we started putting a lot of focus and effort in understanding the geological model. And in the past 2 to 3 years, we've then been doing physical work, so seismic drilling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at the same time we've been doing this, we've been focusing most of our efforts in developing past-producing mine in Nalunaq, extremely high-grade gold mine that is running at a 28 gram per ton. We have a current resource of 320,000 ounces Our target is to increase that resources well above 1 million ounces in the next 3 years, and we are now building that whole project. But before we go into that details, because I'm sure you will have some interest there, is that how the model works for us is that if you think of it like that, in Greenland, half of your cost is just being there. You need to secure rigs, you need to have camps, you need to, all of these different things. And this has been maybe why you haven't seen as much mineral exploration as you would have seen in other jurisdictions. So what we've done in the past 8 years, we have all of that foundation. So what we've now seen in the past 2 years is that both capital is wanting to partner with us. Projects, we've been very successful in acquisition of projects because these projects need someone to actually explore and develop. And so there's a combination of good asset, good team, and infrastructure that we built over this past 8 years. And last but not least, we are also, and I think we are among, if not the largest private investor in Greenland. So there's been a lot of investment into things like rigs, camps, all of these things you need to be able to be successful.
Okay. Before we speak about the project, you recently announced the transfer of your listing in Iceland from the First North Growth market to the Nasdaq main market. What does that mean for the company? And what are the benefits for the main market listing for yourselves?
So we're lucky enough to be, or lucky, we are grateful and happy to be in these two markets in London and Canada, because these are effectively a market that understand mining really well and have investor base that have been very supportive to us. The reason why we went on the First North market in Iceland, which is equivalent to TSXV Venture or AIM market, last year, and we raised there about $37 million, was that Iceland and Greenland, in our mind, are becoming to be one economical area, or have the potential to become one economical area. So if you think about it, Iceland has aluminium smelting business, which is one of the largest contributors of GDP, its fishery, its energy, and then its infrastructure, and then related industry, servicing industry around that. In Greenland, you have exactly the same thing, less amount of people. And so a lot of the way how these two countries work together is that they have cooperation on most of the services around these businesses. So Iceland became something for us as an important hub, and the investor base here understands Greenland really well, we believe, compared to many of the other investor base. Then I talk about how you execute, how you do things, right? So the mining understanding comes from these other exchanges, but the actual execution comes from this. We've been very successful in the Icelandic market and all of these markets in the last year. And what we managed to do in relation to, well, I should say, after we closed the fundraising last year in October, we then had the results from our drilling at previous summer. And that drilling proved two things. It increased the resources for us from 250 to 320. But more importantly, it kind of proved the geological model that we have been building over the years, which is called the Dolorite Dike model. It effectively means that we know what controls the high-grade mineralization within the deposit. We know that this deposit extends for 1 kilometer because we sampled the deposit on the other side. So we know where to drill, or we feel very comfortable where to drill to increase the resources every year. Therefore, a statement like what I'm saying here, where we are at 320,000 ounces and we are targeting above 1 million ounces and then reserves in the next 2 to 3 years, we have a much better comfort on that because we just simply drill this out. So having that, we then could reach out to lenders here in Iceland and in London. So the lender, we did a $50 million loan package, which approximately half of it was convertible and half of it was just a normal RCF lending. And within that 50 million, we also had an overrun facility. And what that did, together with the 37 million we had already raised, we then had a fully funded package to build the mine, start the trial mining in Nalunaq, set up the processing plant, to actually be in a position to mine and process ore on site as early as next year, right? And therefore moving the assets from the first node up to the main market where you're closer to cash flow opens up the company for investment from most, if not all, of the institutional funds in Iceland, which are very large group compared to the size of the country. So I think if you just look at the pension system in Iceland, it's about 50 billion euros. I think the third largest pension system per capita in the world. There's also index buying through FTSE and other index buying into Iceland. So there is a lot of capital that is looking towards this to focus on this. More importantly, the Icelandic market is also very much aware of the geopolitical status about Greenland and Iceland and what we need to do to source ethically and in the best possible manner minerals we need mainly for the energy transition, but also for various different purposes, technology, etc., etc. And therefore, building a company here where we can have an impact on that together with Europe and US and other partners becomes very much important for the system here in Iceland, right? So we are seeing a big support here in Iceland and also actually in the Scandinavia as well. And therefore, we thought that going on the main market first here would have a very impactful impact on the company. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, certainly, certainly. I'm wondering, you can obviously now you've got all the finance in place. I wonder if you can just give us an update on the project and what some of the main milestones we could be looking at for first gold.
Yeah, certainly. So when we announced in March about the heads of terms for the debt package, we then immediately started preparing ourselves to start building the project. And we based all of our work on internal feasibility or technical study that was prepared by Halyard the previous year. I think we announced the result of that the previous year. I think it was in November, right? So that gave an investment cost for the totality of the project. So they had designed everything up to a feasibility standard. And then on that basis, we continued working with Halyard and we then started working with Tyson as a mining contractor. And we're now in the process of working with Amaroq as a logistics and processing partner. So this summer, what we started to do, we started to prepare all of the foundations. We needed to break about 40,000 tons of rock for foundation of the processing plant, of the new camp. We started all procurement of equipment together with Tyson, getting mining equipment, which is now being delivered to site as we speak. We then started getting additional container units for camp purposes for our people, because we will be about 88 people there by the end of this year. So all of these kind of preparation is being taking place. Going forward, by in October, we expect to have finalization of all contracts for an EPCM, the mining contractor, and the logistic and procurement that we will announce to the market, and then we will give a detailed schedule to the market. Where we are right now, which I can kind of give you as an idea right now, what lies ahead of us. So in this coming up quarter, what we are doing now is that we're getting most of these things that we were procuring this summer to site. In around Christmas and New Year, we would from now until, I should say, end of January, we are setting up the mine with Tyson. This means that we are putting gravel and underground electric and things like that. From now up until the same period of time, January, February, we are then setting up the steel building for the processing plant. So the foundation, the building set up by early next year. And then we go inside of the building. The parts that goes inside of the building have already been manufactured. So the crushers, the ball mill, and all of these things, they come effectively ready to site. We obviously need to assemble them together. And then we're expecting to start the mining early next year as well. So we kind of start the mine development in the mountain block, and we are kind of finalizing the processing plan. So in second half of next year, we expect to be starting to run ores through the plant, and obviously we will have mined for a few months at that point in time as well, right? We allow ourselves to ramp up this whole operation throughout next year, right? So it gives us a little bit of time to make sure that everything is working as accordingly, and then we will ramp even faster up in 25, and then 26 we expect to be in full production. So there is a kind of a stepwise strategy towards this to make sure that we execute on time, on budget, and we built in various features to make sure that we both obviously have the ore and facility, but also are being kind of very careful about how we assume the ramp-up process and so on. And obviously we'll try to beat that as time goes by.
Yeah, and obviously as Greenland is a relatively or quite cold climate, are you in operation or able to do obviously activity all year round? And I suppose with that being a relatively cold climate, is there any sort of logistical challenges because of the nature of the climate in Greenland?
Yeah, so if you live in Iceland, you wouldn't consider the part in Greenland that we are operating cold, but I guess in England you would. So it's, it's different where you say it. Generally, if you compare this to like Arctic Canada or Arctic Russia or anything like something like that, this is completely different. Here, as I said earlier, you are on the same latitude as Oslo and Helsinki, so you effectively can sail in. The fjord doesn't freeze up or anything like that. You can always kind of get in and out. In terms of kind of a weather, we can operate on surface without any snow from April, May, all the way most of the time until end of the year, right? So you get this kind of a similar winters as you would have here in Reykjavik. Yes, you get winds and other things, but that's quite, we prepare for that quite well. In terms of logistics, we are expecting 3 to 6 weeks to get anything from Europe or US to site. So we kind of build that into our model. We also built into more inventory to our model to kind of to work against that logistic. But the logistical route into Greenland is via Copenhagen or via Halifax. So the logistical company Eimskip and Royal Arctic Line, which is the Greenlandic logistical company, they basically cooperate together to move in anything from food or equipment and so on. So that's a pretty good service compared to many other countries around in this Arctic region where you kind of have to hire your own ship and do everything yourself. So that's not where we are. This is obviously more, I should say more, there's more work around the logistic than you would have somewhere in Toronto or in London or something like that. That's an obvious fact. But then again, the deposits are also easier to mine than many of these other deposits. The rock formations, we're still high up in the mountain, so you get some challenges, but you also get some benefits being in a new country.
What should we be looking out for within your strategic minerals exploration program? Yeah,
so we have had the busiest exploration program this year. So last year, effectively how the package is set up, I should start there. We have rare earths, we then have base metals, and including in the base metal, we are mainly focusing on copper, molybdenum, these kind of metals, and then we have nickel. We actually also have PGA. So what we did last year is that we started geophysics over part of what we think is a copper belt, which we call Sava. We drilled one hole where we intersected copper in the first 20 meters. So we got up to 7% molybdenum, not absolutely something that we were planning just to be a stratigraphic hole, but it kind of gives you an idea of the prospectivity of Greenland. That deposit we've already drilled again with 4 holes in total. So we finished that season a few weeks back, and we expect the result of that to be with the market end of November, beginning of December. We then finalized geophysics over what we call it a Voisey Bay style intrusion called Stendalen. We finished that, I want to say a month ago, and we are currently drilling into that deposit. into that geophysical signature, which is quite interesting. There's an outcrop of a whole lot of nickel and copper and PGEs in this deposit, so it's a very unique thing to drill. It is a very deep hole. It's up to 1,500 meters, so we are hoping that we can finish the hole this year. If not, then we'll just finish it next year. On the back of that, we are obviously funded with more than 30 million Canadian dollars in that strategic mineral portfolio. So we'll have the result of these things, and then we'll continue drilling these areas. We are doing geophysics over Pattersook and another rare earth play. We're also doing geophysics over the whole new area, copper belt called John Dalland and so on. So we're getting more and more target every year to drill and define. And we really believe that this is a new copper belt in the making and a new potential nickel play that could be of the size of the likes of Voisey Bay. But then the rare earths are more known in Greenland because they are already very, very big. So we're basically targeting the same kind of a deposit that are already there. The beauty about these deposits, they are very far away from any kind of a village or anything like that. So the more remote mineral deposits are today, the better it is for everybody effectively, right?
Obviously, your company is a major player in obviously the Greenland's emerging mining industry. I just wondered if you can give us an overview of the mining industry and the landscape in Greenland at the moment.
Yeah, certainly. So there is most of the kind of, I would say, prospective licenses in Greenland have now been taken up by companies. There are 12 operators in Greenland in total. The biggest one in terms of company size is Anglo-American. So you're seeing major like that already on an exploration stage in Greenland, which is quite rare, but then again, very good. The activity is increasing a lot. The legislation system is great. To operate together with the home rule government of Greenland has been very good. You are operating in a region where there are not a lot of people around you, so it's very remote, which can be very good for a project like this one because you're not in anyone's way. You're also operating in a region where biodiversity is to a minimum, and on the contrary, we're actually building up forest and stuff like that on our mining site. And then in terms of community there, what we're seeing already in South Greenland, and I've just got told this by the South Greenland mayor, is that the taxes are already going up in South Greenland due to our activities. So you're seeing more than 6 companies, like helicopter company, boat logistic company, security company, and I could go on and on, are growing there with Greenlandic people running them and owning them. So you're seeing some wealth being created in the region. And I think the key purpose of us as a company is that we target these mineral deposits in gold. We get some good cash flow to explore for strategic minerals, which are very much needed for the electrification of the world, which is kind of a fight all of the issues we're dealing with in the climate sense. But more than that, what we look at it due to our background here in the company being green energy is that we look at many of these mining sites as a way where we can actually build up green energy, because Greenland is so rich with hydropower and wind and these things. And the local towns, for example, they are all run on oil and gas, to heat up their homes and so on. So there is a way where we can build together with, when we have built these mines, to build up these hydroelectric or wind to run the electricity in mine, which is obviously benefit for the climate. But more importantly, once these mines are finished, say in 20, 30 years, or even earlier, you can then connect the local towns and farms in South Greenland to green energy. And this is very much the same model as Iceland built around the aluminium smelter. So you get the industry to build the big infrastructure. As soon as you become energy independent as a nation, then that results in the fact you don't have to import a lot of oil and gas, which costs a lot of foreign exchange reserves. And so it's actually, for us, what we're trying to build and trying to generate here is a company that can be a leader in terms of how we are operating both within Greenland, but also as a climate company. And that is our focus, and will be our focus for the next 5 to 10 years.
And lastly, I just wonder if there was anything else that you wanted to share with our audience, and also what's the outlook for the company for the remainder of the year going into 2024?
Well, first of all, I mean, Rob, thanks so much for having us or having me. I think what we would like to share is that we kind of a huge gratitude in having the opportunity to work in Greenland. I think it's very much important to not only Greenlanders, but to the rest of the world that Greenland works for the world, because it has so much mineral potential in a safe jurisdiction where we can actually have companies that can trace their mineral from Greenland through processing either in Iceland or in Greenland straight to the product. So Greenland is essentially extremely important for the world that it works and that we operate correctly. In terms of investors in Amaroq, I think we will have extremely good year ahead of us. We've already finished majority of exploration this year. We've set ourselves up for success for our execution. We're in a very buoyant market here in the Nordics who understand how to execute the market, how to do it within the communities, etc., which should give us advantage compared to other markets, we hope. And we're very excited what we're seeing in the core, and we're excited to see what will come out of that once it's out of the lab. So I think we stay tuned. I think we'll have a very good year ahead of us.
Yeah. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for obviously coming on and giving our audience an update. It seems obviously since we last spoke 18 months ago, so much has happened. And obviously we look forward to the next 12 months, because obviously there's a lot of things going to be happening. So it'd be great if you can come on later next year and come on and give us an update.
It would be my honor and pleasure.
Yeah, great. Well, and also if our audience wants to obviously follow your journey, how can they go about doing that? What social media platform channels can they follow you on?
I think we're pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn with anything that comes out of the company. We are also, obviously, our webpage, amaroqminerals.com, any kind of RNS and feeds, all of that goes into if you want a more detailed, so that we manage to make sure all of that reporting. But I would say through our webpage, through our RNSs and press releases, and then we make sure we bring that to the market through the likes of LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yeah, and as always, we'll include those in the show notes accompanying this episode. So as always, wish you well for the remainder of the year going into next year, and thank you for coming onto the podcast. And for the audience, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Obviously, we don't get many guests on here that are mining in Greenland, so I appreciate if you can share this episode amongst our mining community, but also people outside of the mining industry, because it's showing evidence of especially a country that is probably not known for their mining and what they're looking to achieve. And as Eldur mentioned, by starting or having a mining presence there, they're building the wealth of the surrounding area by creating other businesses, and obviously businesses in that area are increasing their revenues because of Eldur and Amaroq being there in a certain area and location in Greenland. So really appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes, and until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.